And you're now live.
Thank you, Asha. Welcome everyone to today's FBS Chat with Dr. Russ Sabella, all the way from, I'm assuming it's sunny California, Russ.
Oh.
We're having snow at the moment, so I'm assuming
Is that right? Oh my God.
Yeah.
No snow here.
And my co-host, the lovely Grainer from Bath in the UK.
Bristol.
Bristol.
Close to Bath.
It's close to Bath, yeah.
Yeah, begins with the same letter. So, like we always do when we first start these chats, Russ, really intrigued how you came across that solution-focused approach in the first place, and what drew you to it, what made you carry on with it. That's Russ.
Sure, that's a good question, and thank you guys for inviting me. Thanks for being here. I discovered, and I remember it really well. I write about this in the book. I discovered a book I read. A friend of mine referred it to me. I think I was in graduate school at the time. It was early 90s. And it was called In Search of Solutions by Michelle Weiner Davis and Bill O'Hanlon. And I was really intrigued. I'm probably almost blown away. I thought, as someone who always embraced empowerment and looking at strengths and resources and opportunities, this was a little different than the behaviorism and some of the other more problem-centered approaches that I was following. And at the time, I was not only in doc school, but I was a school counselor. And so as I started to look more and more into the solution-focused approach, and remember now at the time, this was being developed for marriage and family therapists, for mental health therapists, substance abuse counselors really then started using it. But it was really not something that school counselors or education was really looking at. And so as a school counselor, I thought, this is really something I want to look into. So it took me a while. And then it was around 1995 when I finished my doctorate. My first professor job was at the University of Louisville. Met a good friend of mine, Dr. Jerry Scolaire, and turns out he was also very, very interested in this model. So he got a grant. And that's what we did for almost 4 years. We spent every Friday in several different schools, K through 12, answering two questions. Does the model work with kids? And will it work in an educational setting? And sure enough, we did a lot of tweaking. We did a lot of developing. And again, that was started in 95. So here we are, 2021. We've had over 2.5 decades to really develop lots of research. And the book really has been a quarter century in the making, really. And so I finally decided it's time to take a dive, and we've really experienced and developed so many practical applications of this. And really, it's the first book that cuts across an entire school counseling program. It's not just for individual counseling. This is a model that works whether you're a parent, a supervisor, an organizational developer, or a business leader. It's a model of positive change.
Yeah. So before you discovered the approach, how did and obviously you fell in love with it and thought this may work in the school setting or with school counseling. What was it in particular that thought, you know what, this is a no-brainer. I've got to try this.
Well, and to be honest with you, Joe, I'm not sure it was a no-brainer. At the time, I was doing what a lot of educators were doing. We were using behaviorism, really looking at how to reward and increase the frequency and intensity of student behaviors, and come up with schedules of reinforcement. And I knew that took a lot of work, and I knew that there might be a better way out there, but I wasn't quite sure. I was maybe like some of you, I was a little bit skeptical at first. Could it be that we could help kids and families without really ever delving into what causes their problems or the history of their biopsychosocial history of their problems? And so at first I was skeptical. I had to see it for myself. And it was during those 4 years every Friday where that's what I was able to do. I was able to be able to see just how empowering it was. And one of the things that we were able to overcome was this idea that maybe this was a Band-Aid approach, that perhaps if you really truly don't look at problems, then you're destined to repeat them. And what we discovered, and we collected some data on this, is that no, these results last, and they last no longer or shorter than the other approach. And what we did learn was that if you that we were kind of using the wrong terminology, that you were not doomed to repeat your past. We were trying to get people to repeat their past. It was just the wrong focus. That in their past, kids and families had a lot of strengths and resources and opportunities, but we weren't focusing on them. We were focusing on the dramas and the traumas. And so once we made the paradigm shift, we were able to get more of what we focused on, and we saw great results.
And Russ, so did you get feedback from teaching staff and the school from the results that you were finding, as well as obviously yourself seeing a difference each time you'd see your students?
Yeah, Grana, that's a great question. We did get, just like, well, we couldn't have expected it at the time, but today, knowing what we know now, it was to be expected. We had some people who were delighted with the results, others who looked at the results in a very skeptical way. How is it that I've been working with this kid for, a year, and then you're able to get some things done that I couldn't get done in a year in a matter of a week or two? And that was troubling for them. And I write about that in the book, how it is we overcame some of that stuff. And then we had some who were just simply delighted and didn't question it. So it was a real mixed bag, mixed reaction. And still today, as I do trainings for all kinds of counselors, we still have people who walk in the door a little bit skeptical as to how this could work, because the problem-centered approach has been so ingrained in us, And in fact, I get people who come in who say, "Oh, I'm already solution focused," and I kind of hope that they're going to learn some things throughout the day, and they're the ones who come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh my gosh, I've learned so much." And I say, "Well, but didn't you say you came in? You said you're already solution focused." And what we discovered, and this is one of the myths of the model, which I write about right up front in the book, is that people get those two things confused. Just because you come out with goals doesn't mean that you're solution focused. You can be problem centered and still have goals, but the two pathways are very different. So taking a problem centered pathway, as you know, is very different than taking the solution focused pathway. What you focus on, the kinds of questions you ask, what it is especially you don't focus on, all of that matters in this model.
So do you train teachers as well as other school counsellors? Are you working kind of inherently in schools in that way, like a whole school approach?
Well, when I can get the chance to do that, right now I'm focusing mostly on school counselors and quite a bit of a few mental health counselors as well. I encourage principals to include teachers whenever they can. And by the way, I've done full day workshops just for principals who really incorporate the ideas in how it is that they manage, govern, as well as empower their employees, the whole staff, to really be on track and meet their potential. One of the things that's on my to-do list that I really would like, and I've got some research projects coming up that I would like to do, is really empower more parents. My vision is that we train parents how to do the basics of this model and then have them take the lead in their own parent-teacher conferences to be able to call teacher and say, okay, it's been 4 months. I'm ready to have a solution-focused conversation. Here are the things I want, we're going to sit down and I want to know, what are the things that you've observed that help me understand that my student, my child here is on track? What will they be doing when they're more on track? What is it, teacher, that you've been doing that helped make that happen? And how is it that I, as a parent, could also contribute to what did I do and what is it that I will be doing even better? So I think, just to kind of summarize that answer, I honestly believe that, and in fact, in the book, I write about solution-focused schools. There have been some schools that have incorporated the model and trained everyone in the building. And I really think that's a key. I think everyone focusing on the same thing and using the same language can only make things better. I've always said that if you do the solution-focused model a little, you'll get a little better results. If you do it a lot, you'll get a lot better results.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I sure you know about that, don't you? Working with schools and parents, and just trying to join all the dots, really.
And it makes such a difference between the school and parent relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
Massive difference.
And in fact, one of the things that I tell school counselors and teachers is that this is a model that will help flip the script. And so, we say, well, I can never get a hold of that parent. That parent doesn't want to come to school. They don't want to answer the phone. They don't. And I say to them, well, I don't blame them. I mean, every time we talk to them, it's always about what Johnny did wrong and, what isn't going well. And so we have to really kind of flip that script. And using this model, we're going to having more solution-focused conversations. I think we're developing partners instead of enemies.
And we do a lot of we do work in schools and with groups of young people, and obviously we always ask them what their hopes are from the sessions that we have, and sometimes they're in complete kind of the school says this is what needs to happen, this is what needs to change for this young person, but the young person says actually this is what I'd like to work on. How do you
Yeah. And so you're right. I mean, it's kind of a co-constructivistic model. So, the assumption that Steve DeShazer and Insoo Kimber, kind of the founders of the model, really established early on is that the kid is expert in their own lives. However, at the same time, we do bring, as professionals, we do bring some, judgment and common sense to the table. And so I think that's a little bit of a negotiation. There are some things that are non-negotiable. You got to follow the code of student conduct. You have to, pass your classes. And so I think I think what I like to do is I like to start with what the kid wants to do. And then I can always layer in, just like the icing on a cake, what it is the adults want that kid to do. And frankly, it's all related. One behavior is related to the next, whether it's academic or social, emotional, or college and career related, they all have something to do with each other. So it's not hard to make the leap from one goal to the next.
Yeah.
And do you find working with different ages? Sorry, Joe. Do you find working with different age groups? Because obviously, school can be 3 up to 19. I work with 16 to 19-year-olds, and do you find that you kind of you differentiate with that approach? I mean, I know it's about what they want, and you start with their hopes, but do you find your style changes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true for any approach. So, and I get that question a lot, can I use this with elementary school kids? Will this work, with middle schoolers? And I say, yes, and yes. The approach is not different. How you deliver it changes. And so the way I cheerlead with a high school doesn't sound very much like how I cheerlead an elementary school student. And with an elementary school student, just like I would do with any approach, sometimes they don't understand the language. For example, the miracle question, they don't really quite get that. And so I would incorporate some of the creative and expressionistic delivery methods. So I might introduce a magic wand or a football gridiron in order to do scaling. I'll bring in my props. We'll do puppets. We'll use play. We'll use biblio counseling. And so I write about that in the book. There's a whole section on play, solution-focused play counseling, and some learning activities as examples for delivering to very young students the model.
So in your, you said you had a grant for 4 years from 1995, and I'm guessing at the end of those 4 years you came up. What pleased you most in those 4 years? What made you think, this is something I need to continue with?
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, this model takes practice. So one of the things I was pleased with was sticking to it, not giving it up, not abandoning it when things weren't quite going as well as I'd hoped. What I ended up realizing was that the model was not hard to do. It was difficult sometimes because I was having trouble letting go, listening for problems and assuming that I have to understand causes and that kind of stuff. So, knowing that it was doable and if you practiced, you were able to get it. we were wondering at the beginning of that grant, how were we going to put in our 50 hours a week at the university, and sometimes more, and then spend all day Friday, kind of testing out kicking the tires of this model. We're going to be exhausted. And to our delight, it was actually the opposite. We'd kind of gone in tired on Friday morning, but by the end of the day, I can be honest with you, we went out for chicken wings and beer, and we were excited to talk about all of the things that we had just experienced. And it was really empowering to us. It was, we were energized by what we were able to accomplish and do with all the kids and their parents. I tell some stories in the book about how, some of the skeptical moms and dads and others were still in disbelief about, the new Johnny. and again, as I say that, these are good examples, but there's no model that's a panacea. This is not 100%. Some kids it works better than others. I've had one or two kids where they just were not ready for this model. We had to, and there's no one thing that typically works. Sometimes you got to incorporate adults. So, for example, in the book, there's a whole section on how to deliver this systematically, how to include parents and teachers at all times, by first identifying and really cheerleading the work they have already done, and then letting them know, kind of downplaying our role. So I say to them, look, I know you've been working really hard, mom or teacher. I know you've been going at this for months or years, and it's been somewhat frustrating, but you love this kid and you really want to keep at it. And then I downplay my role. I don't know if there's anything I can do that you haven't done already. And I say, maybe together, maybe if we work on this together, we can make this happen. And then I kind of go for what I call the BOLO. Kid walk into the classroom, and usually they curse you out in the first 10 minutes, but this time they waited 20 minutes. I need to know that. I need to know that's 100% progress, by the way. That's the foundation that I'm going to, if they bring their pencil, and I got pushback from teachers. Well, aren't they supposed to bring their pencil? Yes, but they're not. And so now they are, and that's an improvement. So we got to focus on that. We take nothing for granted. So I asked them to kind of be my eyes and ears, and then expect them, to kind of let them know that the next time I talk to them, that's going to be what I'm going to ask. What is it that you've noticed that you would say might be a sign of progress? And then when all of that progress happens, they all get credit, and that's one of the lessons that we learned early on. You have to do that, because unless they buy into this as a team, they don't understand the results. They frankly don't believe the results, and they don't really, and if they don't get some credit for that, they just don't really pay attention too much to those. So I asked the teacher, I said, you notice Johnny, he waited 20 minutes or he brought his pencil. What did you do to help make that happen? And then I call home, mom. And now mom's getting more calls about, hey, we're noticing some improvement, and I want to know what it is that you did to help make that happen as well. We really massage and detail and mind map the behaviors that each person was responsible for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it's a lot of parents, when they get that text from the school or that phone call, their immediate reaction is, oh my God, what's he or she done now? Right. And it must make such a difference for the parents to actually say, you know what, he brought his pencil case in, he had his equipment, and that's a start, and we'll work from there. And
it really is.
Yeah, those small changes.
And the other thing, Joe, is that a lot of times, and I get it, as educators, especially now in the middle of a pandemic, they say, I don't have time to make these calls, and I, this kind of stuff. And I think that's still a problem-centered mindset. What I find is that when teachers and school counselors start making those solution-focused calls, the calls are more brief. They empower all the individuals involved. And in the long run, those people have more time not dealing with the student. And so I see those calls as an investment. It's a long-term investment. And I think the net gain is more time.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm really interested in your the peer mentoring. So you have a chapter on peer mentoring, and I really like to explore within my setting. And I know as a teacher, when you ask a student to teach what they've just learned to another student, the results are amazing. You know, it kind of just enhances learning from both sides. So how do you find the peer mentoring work?
Absolutely, Grant. A great question. Before I learned solution focus, I was actually, that's what I did full time. I taught peer helping 6 classes at a high school, and then I incorporated peer helping as a middle school counselor. And I'm a big believer in peer helping. I think, in fact, that's another underutilized area. I tell school counselors all the time, I can tell one of the other areas that I focus on quite a bit is cyberbullying and digital reputation and helping kids in that area. And, I can talk till I'm blue in the face, but if they hear the same exact message from a peer, it carries so much more weight. And so the question for me all these years too has always been, how can we capture and use the power of peers, peer influence, to have them help each other? And what I found too is that the peer helper benefits from that. Training and helping others and altruism is also treatment.
Yeah.
And so somewhere along the lines, I started wondering, how can we develop more solution-focused peer helping? And so in the book, I kind of outline just kind of a range of things, helping kids to learn the basics of this model in order to have more solution-focused conversations with each other. Let's start there. Secondly, might be even in the course of something like peer tutoring, listening for strengths and resources and opportunities, more than focusing on what the kid is doing wrong in the course of their academics. And then in the book too, I started looking at maybe a new area. I kind of almost propose it, which is solution-focused conflict resolution. Could we teach kids to, as peer mediators, to take on more of a solution-focused approach to mediate conflicts? So all of that, I think, is fair game. And frankly, that's a wide open area. There's just not a lot of research in that area. So that part of the book for me was more anecdotal and potential as well.
And in terms of families becoming involved, and I guess it must break down those barriers for parents who feel that all they ever get is bad news. And when the schools start to say, well, actually, this is going quite well, the next sign of improvement would be whatever, then you're more likely to get them on board. I
think so. And, we know how important that is. We talk about kind of a three-legged stool. You got to have school people. You got to have teachers and counselors and administrators. You got to have the kid. And then you got to have somebody at home. And, we get them for 6-7 hours a day, and then someone else gets them for way more time than that. And so those partnerships are very, very critical. Unfortunately, I think, at least in the United States, perhaps where you are as well, I think schools have kind of taken on way more responsibilities than they should, especially the in loco parentis, taking on things that perhaps parents should be doing more and letting them off the hook for not doing it. So I tell my school counselor interns all the time, to include the parent, make them responsible for what it is they should be responsible for. Schools cannot do everything. And so at the same time, though, we have to give parents the tools to do that. And so I think by helping them learn how to be more solution-focused with their own children, how to be a solution-focused parent. There's actually, I think it was one of my colleagues, Linda Metcalf, that wrote a book called Parenting Towards Solutions. Fantastic book. I've given it to parents who said it's changed their lives.
That's great. I tell you, I'm really enjoying your book. I love the fact that it is a manual and you can just open it up at whatever point that you need the relevant kind of section, and I really have got an awful lot out of it.
Wonderful. I love that.
I like all the step-by-step guides, and there's so many case studies as well. And I think, because I'm new to the solution focused approach, And what I found was there wasn't enough examples of an actual conversation. And so and you've got so much in there to see how the conversation might go.
Yes, thank you. And you know, that was the goal. The goal was to come up with a book that was based on a theory, but at the same time was so highly practical. And a lot of people don't know that. You know, a lot of these theories like CBT and REBT and ACT, all these acronyms, you know, were developed theoretically first, and then we had to figure out the techniques in order to make it happen. This is a model that was really the other way around. Insoo Kim Berg and Steve DeShazer and all the people in Milwaukee working on this from the very beginning said, let's figure out what we're doing that works, and then we'll develop a model around it. And so I find the model very, very practical. In fact, it's consistent with my philosophy. Everything I do has to follow the 3 E's. As a teacher or a counselor, if I'm working with you, I've got to help you be more effective, efficient, and make your job more enjoyable starting now. And if I can't do that, then I'm really of no value to you. So you're right. We came up with lots of step-by-step techniques. What I like about this model is that you don't have to follow things step by step. So if you don't like, you know, 1, 2, 3, then do it 2, 1, 3 or 3, 1, 2. You can mix things up. It's a very flexible and elegant model. Also, you know, just all of the different transcripts in there are all authentic. They're me working with kids in small groups. In fact, as I'm thinking about it, we were just talking about peer helping. I tell the story of going to a middle school and working with one of their after school clubs. And it was called the Gentlemen's Club. And it was really a euphemism because they were not very gentlemanlike. But so what I noticed right away was that they needed 2 things. They needed a peer helper project, that what they were learning was not really valuable until they were going to teach it to someone else. So we made them peer helpers. Their job was to develop a transition program for the elementary school next door, for the 5th graders that were coming to that middle school the next academic year. And then the second thing was I wanted to make it solution focused. And so, you know, one of the first questions I asked them, even though they were some of the worst behaved kids in that school, you know, you're in 6th grade, you've gotten through 5th grade, you've succeeded. And so how did you do it? What did you do to make that happen? Who noticed? What difference did it make? How did it make a difference to them? Amplified it. And so training was treatment as we were helping them develop. So they developed the PowerPoint, they developed learning activities, all kinds of things for this transition program, all based. And what we found too was that as they were doing that, because we were being more solution focused, their own progress improved. They were attending more, had less discipline referrals. Teachers were telling us they had more time on task. And so we really, you know, we incorporated the power of the model and the power of peer helping together. And it worked out really well.
Yeah, I love that section.
By the way, I also worked with the girl version of that group. They called themselves the Lovely Ladies, and they weren't very lovely either. Found out very quickly it was a euphemism. That was even more rough. But you know, we were able to do some of the similar things. For that one, I had to have a teacher present just to help me out.
Yeah. So if we were the 3 of us going to go into a school and say, do you know what, this may be something you want to consider, because it's been difficult, Russ, to be honest. It's been difficult to go into different schools and say, actually, maybe focusing on what the child can do rather than what they can't do may be a different way of viewing it. There's still some resistance. How can we persuade them? I mean, I know you're from what you've said, it all sounds fantastic, and we've seen those results. We've seen those kids where it was almost like they were forgotten, or there was no chance of them making any changes. To make those changes in such a short space of time, but it was persuading the hierarchy, I guess.
Yeah.
It's because they're labelled, aren't they? Some of the children are labelled without, you know, the staff room talk.
Yeah. Well, one of the tricky points of this model, I think it was something Steve DeShazer said, if I remember right, and it doesn't feel very good to say this to oneself, but there is no such thing as resistance. There aren't resistant students. There are only resistant counselors. And so here's my thought on that. And that is, once again, this is a model that's going to help us flip the script. So we don't wait to get their support in order to get the results we need. We get the results we need, and then we get their support. And so I always say, start small. Even if you're working with 2 to 3 kids, sometimes it's a small group of 6 kids. And then you've got to collect some data. You've got to be able to say, what is the true impact of this on everything that we care about? Social, emotional mindsets and behaviors, academics, college and career readiness, and any of the indicators that we would say, yes, we need more of this. And so once we do that with a few, then we start to expand. And, in fact, one of the messages that I give administrators is, once I get the evidence and say, look, here's what we have done, and here's what we know. More kids would benefit if we were able to get to them in a similar way. And so is this consistent with your mission? And if it is, then which child do we leave behind? So you have to decide that.
Ooh, yeah.
So, if your mission is that we're going to work with these kids and help them, how are you deciding which ones we're not going to help?
Oh, that is clever. Yeah.
Mm.
I like it.
And so, one of the other things too, and I school counselors who I work with know this, we always, you can't keep adding to your plate. And so if I'm going to do more work with more kids doing this, I've got to do less of something else. And so that's also part of the formula. What are the things that I'm doing that others could more easily do, so that I can do more of what not a lot of other people are doing right now.
Yeah. So yeah, freeing up that time to focus on.
What I also find too is not only providing evidence in order to gain support, but to really have some supporters ready to go. So as you know, in this model, there's no such thing as all or none. Somebody says to me, I get no support for this. I'd say, let's think about that for a second. There's always fluctuations. There's always exceptions in this model. That's one of the hardest things that a lot of new practitioners really struggle with, is that all or none thinking. The labels, you talked about, that some kids are more ADHD some days than others. Okay? So we've got to focus on that fluctuation. So who is the one teacher, if you were to go work in her classroom, that could go to the principal and say, wow, this solution-focused person is coming in, and here's what I'm noticing among my kids, and it's making my life easier. Can she recommend another teacher that you could work with? And now you have 2 teachers that can support you. And so I think it's really building capacity. It's starting small. It's creating ripple effects until you're not asking for support, but they're asking you how it is that they can support you.
Yeah.
In other words, it's the solution-focused hypothetical. See, if I were to get all of the support I needed, who would notice? What would they notice? What difference would it make? And then start there, and your miracle will start to come true.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, I have to say, when I was doing my in fact, it was the last lockdown, so I had all that time to kind of really to learn it, but I wasn't learning on the job because I wasn't really doing the job. I wasn't doing the face-to-face, so I was kind of, keeping it all there until the time that we got back into the classroom. But all I was thinking right from the beginning was, it's not going to work if it's just me. This has got to be a training program for the rest of the staff. Otherwise, you're only going to kind of reach 1 or 2 people. And so, what you're saying really does resonate.
Yeah, and that takes time. In fact, as I'm saying all of that, really, just to make you aware, one of the other one of the influences on me has been the American School Counselor Association national model for comprehensive school counseling programs. And so this is the solution-focused method is really well designed to help do just that, not just deliver services, but build a program. And so, in fact, that's what makes this book unique as well. As you saw, that I cut across all aspects of a comprehensive school counseling program, even consulting with teachers. I even talk about starting a beginning teacher support group, because one of the things that keeps me up at night is how so many teachers, I think 50% here in the United States, are the turnover rate. They're not teaching after 5 years, and half of them leave the profession. So we've got to find a better way to empower teachers. And I tell the story in the book about how my interns did some morning beginning teacher supports. And before you know it, veteran teachers were showing up saying, hey, I've heard about this group. You guys are talking about what works. Let me tell you, I've been doing this for 25 years. I know a few things about what works. And so I think the solution, when you're a solution seeker, it really attracts people rather than pushes them away.
Yeah. So when what made you write the book, Russ? What were you hoping that people would gain from reading your book?
Yeah. Well, Joe, that's a great question. I've thought about it for a very long time. And the reason why I didn't do it was because there were already so many good books on solution focused out there. And I thought, why do people need another one? However, probably in the last 3 to 5 years, more and more, I found myself wishing that the books I were using for my classes or recommending to others were better and different. And so I got to a point where I quit wishing and said, all right, I got to make this happen. So the book is unique in different ways. One, as you said, it's got lots of authentic stories and transcripts and examples. It's got some very practical, I called it the missing manual for a reason. It's got some very practical, time-tested approaches to making things happen. And I wrote it specifically for school counselors. A lot of times school counselors have to adopt the language of mental health. And it really is a different atmosphere, different environment. And this is the first book that focuses a whole lot more beyond just individual counseling, and it focuses on all the aspects of a comprehensive school counseling program. So this is the book that I've been looking for in the last few years, and finally was able to write.
Well, I'm so pleased you did.
And the other issue too is, I wrote it not as a scholarly book. I wasn't trying to please graduate students. I was really focusing mostly on practitioners. I wanted them to be able to pick up this book, whether you're a teacher or a school counselor or mental health counselor. I'm finding those guys are writing me and telling me they're enjoying it as well. But to be able to, again, do something better or different because you read the book. And it just so happens, it turns out that's what our graduate students want as well. So it's not bogged down by a lot of, theoretical jargon. It's definitely a missing manual.
I really liked the, sorry, Aisha.
It's all right.
I really liked the poop lady story. There wasn't enough detail in that.
I'm sorry, you broke up a little. What story?
There was a story at the end, the poop lady.
Oh gosh, yeah, you're giving away the punchline there. Yeah, the poop lady. I know.
Say no more. Say no more. Poop lady, that's it.
Yeah. So at the end of the book, I tell one of my favorite stories about, and actually I was doing a solution-focused workshop for teachers, and this was a teacher who sat through an entire day, not knowing that she was very skeptical. And at the end of the day, she got up and confronted me about how this was going to work with her very specialized kids. These are kids who were, had some very, very serious needs. Mm-hmm. And she put me on the spot, and I was able to get through it. I was able to answer her question, and kind of ran out of there afterwards and forgot about it. But she wrote me an email 3 weeks later, giving me some unexpected praise about how well it worked with her. And I'll leave you at that. There are more details about it. And she referred to herself as the poop lady. I'll let you read that. I won't give it all away.
So anyone rushing to buy the book after they watch this FBS chat will be going straight to the back to find the poop lady.
Don't do that. You'll enjoy it more if you read the book, go from front to cover.
There's a build-up, guys.
It's a build-up.
There is
I forgot about that. That's a great story. Oh my gosh.
And I suppose it's more for you, Grainer, really, because you're me and Aisha were in education and now doing more family work. Grainer is still in education. I'm just wondering how useful the book was for you. What was it?
Yeah, well, I work with special educational needs. I'm the coordinator, so I'm always looking at interventions, and now that I've learned the approach, it feels like every intervention has to be a solution-focused intervention. You know, even though that's not really expected, other interventions are expected. But I just feel that every day I'm thinking, oh, this person needs a bit of solution-focused. So yeah, I found the book really, really useful. Just because I can kind of just dip in and out, and just because I'm working with special educational needs, it doesn't mean that it's not useful for everyone. I think, you know, looking at inclusive education, then you need to be looking much more broadly.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make two good points. One is I think this works especially well with when you're working with special needs kids, or in other cases, you know, kids who are the most dissed. They're disinterested and dismissed, and they're most troublesome because they've been through problem-centered counseling and they're tired of doing more of the same and having the same result. So this is a nice way. I think I even talk about it in the book. You know, there's doing some small group counseling at alternative schools with some really tough kids, and you know, you start with I tell them, I start with, look, I know you've been through a lot. I know you've had some things you had to get through, and you've had many troubles that would probably be very interesting if we talked about them. But I'm more interested in how it is they stayed in the game, how it is they're still coming to school, they're not in jail, they're not, you know, out doing drugs, and or at least not that I'm aware of. But so that, you know, that I wanted to focus on what it is that kept them in the game. And they look at you like, are you crazy? No one has really asked me that. And so, and it takes them a good 15 to 20 minutes to really kind of size you up and say, are you for real? Or, you know, how come we're not doing the regular counseling thing? But once we break through that, they are the ones that respond the best. And so, you know, any kind of special needs or special situations, I think this is refreshing for them. And the other thing that you said really is so true. Dip in and dip out. You know, I write in the first chapter about some of the myths. And one of the myths that a lot of people believe is that you've got to do the whole model for it to work, right? And it's a huge model. It's one of the things I like about it. A lot of other counseling models are not very clear about the techniques, or if one thing's not working, how can I go to a different thing? But this is a model where it's so flexible. You know, and I recommend in the book that you start, if you're just getting started, to start with some solution-focused scaling. And I give you a 4-step process on how to do that. And you don't even ever really have to focus on goals. If you focus only on exploring progress already made, if you tell me you're at a 3, we're going to spend the next 30 or 40 minutes exploring how it is that you're already at a 3, especially given all the adversities that you might be experiencing. And then as it turns out, you're probably going to think more about 1 or 2 things you did that you weren't thinking about because you weren't focused on them. And that's really the basis of this. You know, the reason why people have a lot of the problems they have is because that's what they're focused on. You know, we always talk about the cycle of violence. Well, yeah, because we keep focusing on the same thing over and over again. And so, you know, if we get them to shift gears and focus on something else, the assumption is they're going to get more of what they focus on. And so just doing that, just doing some solution-focused scaling, exploring progress already made, detail it, mind map it, minefield it, cheerlead it, and reframe when you need to. That's it. That's your start. Don't worry about the rest of the model. You can always add on as you get more experience.
That makes sense.
So what's next?
Wow, that's a good one.
I always save the best till last. I just jump in there and say a few words.
I do still have a lot of questions. You know, I wanna do some research on how it is we can more effectively teach this to parents, how they can take a better lead in their own work with teachers, and how they can take the lead in partnerships. I do want to collect some more data on solution-focused conflict resolution. One of the other things that I would love to do is maybe pick a school and see if we can get the whole school to be more solution-focused and learn from that.
Yeah.
Great, son. We'll do it.
Yeah.
We because we have such a long waiting list, Russ, we've actually started a 4-week workshop for parents, well, families who are on the waiting list, and we invite parents to join, where we teach the parents the solution-focused approach and how they can adapt that in their own environment at home.
Oh, wonderful.
And the peer support, you know, just putting them into breakout rooms to kind of talk about their best hopes, bringing them back, and then talking about where they would place themselves on the scales as parents, what they wouldn't change about themselves, blah, blah, blah. It works amazing.
Yeah.
And you can really start to see the difference. And what we're finding is that actually they're less likely to need further family support.
Yeah. Yeah. It really fosters independence and autonomy. And it's an empowerment model, you know, is getting them to do more for themselves. So I think we're just getting started. You know, it's been about 25 or 30 years in the making, and a little bit longer than that if we go back to mental health and marriage and family. But I feel like we're just getting started. You know, we've learned a lot, and I think we still have a long way to go. I think one of the books that I would like to put together is maybe a book on solution-focused learning activities. So a teacher or a school counselor can do more solution-focused classroom lessons that meet certain mindsets and behaviors across the board. So they don't have to scramble around looking or taking problem-centered activities and trying to make them solution-focused. I put a few of those activities in the book already, but I could see doing a whole book just on that.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Well, you guys are doing some fantastic work, and I'm getting goosebumps because I think independently we've been following the same track. How is it that we can empower the whole system, whether it's teachers and parents and kids, to speak the same language, to focus more on how it is they're doing things right instead of how they're doing things wrong, and then moving them more towards the hypothetical. And I always tell people I work with that language matters. I don't ask them, what can you do to get to the next level? I ask them, what will you be doing when you're at the next level? You know, where there's a will, there's a way.
Oh, you've shot yourself in the foot, Russell.
What have I done?
Because now you're gonna be one of those. Oh, let me just ask Russell. Oh, I wonder if Russell can help with this. Oh, Russell, what do you think about this? See,
and that's okay. You know, I'm dedicated to this model, so people can write me, they can email me from the website.
You need to dedicate half a day a week just for me.
I'm glad to help. Well, it sounds like you're already doing quite a bit. And like I said, I think rather than trying to break through resistance, I think, you know, flip the script a little bit, start gaining two things, the data as well as the collaborators who can, you know, teachers and parents who can vouch for you, and start building on that.
I think when we have the parent groups, because often with in the work that we do, the child is very resistant to sit in front of someone and talk about what's been going on and how it's affected everyone. But at least with the parents, it's a start. And you know that saying, you know, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to just keep getting the same results. So and it's almost like it's not a support group, more as a training kind of support group in that sense. So if you were to ask your child the best hopes, I don't expect you to sit them around the table and say, right, so what are our best hopes? Because they won't. But there's a way you can phrase it, or a way you can have that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I think that's I think our early founders in this really did focus a lot more on the hypothetical. Insoo Kim Berg was kind of famous for that. And her famous word was suppose. Well, let's suppose things were going better. What I've learned over the years, I think that's great. It's doable. But what I found is that especially kids have a better time with this if you don't start with that, but start with exploring progress already made. Be able to identify how far they really have come, even if they're at a 2 out of 10. That's 20%. Given all that you've been through, you're still at 20%. You're not at the lowest. Even if you were at the lowest, things are fluctuating. Some days you're at a 2, some days you're at a 1, other days you might be at a 4. We're going to focus on your better days. And having that conversation really breaks down the resistance, so you can then get to hopes and dreams and better futures. What I'm also finding is that as more and more parents and others get used to this online environment, this model lends itself really well to doing it online, because there's not a lot of huge issues of sensitivity or confidentiality. We're not talking about things that would embarrass you or that sensitive. In fact, I get kids, at the end of a meeting say, "Hey, would you call my mom and tell her what we talked about? Because, this is not the conversations we're having at home." And so even in groups, doing some solution-focused exploration with 5 or 6 people, incorporating, and I have a whole chapter on that in the book, doing solution-focused groups. Well, those really lend themselves well to the online environment.
Yeah. And what we've found as well is that, particularly in the area of work that we're in, there can often be a lot of shame and stigma, and so they're allowed to join the group without showing their faces, even put another name up. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We've spoken to who is it? Galaxy S9, Sparkles. But the beauty of it is, I know that if we'd invited them to our office, they wouldn't have come. They wouldn't have come to a group setting with other people physically in a room. But being able to just turn the camera off and be honest and open about what's going well and what needs to change, it's been a huge benefit.
Yeah,
this way of working.
Yeah, and what I find too, especially in groups, is that they empower each other. One solution leads to the next, and so I've got kids remembering, I used to do that, and I said, well, so they're starting to discover that some of the issues they're having are issues because they stopped doing that, and so they're reminding each other of ways that they've coped, that they've navigated, that they've achieved. And they're giving each other some new ideas as well. And so that's one of my questions that I like to ask in the group was, what's one thing that you've heard someone else talk about that's helped them, that if you were to start doing it, it would also help you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah,
we don't even need to write it down, Joe, because we've got this video.
Because we've stolen that already.
We've stolen that.
We like to steal. We like magpies. We see shiny things. And we use them, but yeah, with that group cohesion, that just knowing that you're not on your own with that actually it's not just me.
Right. Yeah. So like we talked about earlier, kind of bringing together the power of peer helping and solution focus. I love bringing the power of doing groups and doing solution-focused groups together. I find them to be more exciting and powerful than problem-centered groups.
There's a real skill to it, though, isn't there? Just kind of holding a group. I think, it's something that I'd love to be able to explore, but I feel like there's different skills involved.
There are, and this is why we have a couple of classes just on group counseling alone in our program as we train counselors. In the book, I did, knowing that, you're right, I did cover some of the basics, group processes, norms, stages, therapeutic factors, and that kind of stuff. So I did cover that just a little bit, just a kind of a reminder that there is a group process that you have to follow as well. And then you can be solution focused.
So, Russ, tell us something about yourself that others may not necessarily know.
Oh my. Oh, let's see.
It's only us.
Well, here's something. I don't really talk about this. I don't even know if my students know about this. I've always been attracted to empowerment. When I was 14, I discovered the martial art of judo. And the whole idea of judo is the gentle way is to be able to not fight force with force, but to go with the force. And so it's a very elegant, sufficient martial art. And so I think I've always been attracted to this idea of maximum efficiency and minimum effort. Whether it's a martial art or a counseling approach or being a parent or that kind of stuff. The other area that I spent a lot of time is technology. And I actually I taught a career counseling class one day, and I volunteered for a career activity, and it was I think it was doing a genogram or something like that. And actually, my students helped me to discover that I did have a theme that cut across all my work, whether it's helping people use technology or overcoming cyberbullying or being more solution focused or using the power of peer helping. The theme was empowerment, helping people to maximize their productivity and their lives. And so I discovered that not too long ago.
I like it. Any last questions, Joe and Grainer?
Well, I mean, what can, because we've got your website scrolling across the bottom there, Russ. What wonderful pieces of information can we find on your website? Yeah.
So the website really supports all of that work that I just talked about. I think one of the places that people go to the most is the handouts. So if you go to professional development, you click on handouts. For example, in the solution focus section, I've got a 35-page, what I call starter kit. So if you haven't gotten the book yet and you just want your starter kit, it's a bunch of, pieces of it that I put together as a place to start. There's also a bunch of you can download a bunch of templates for scaling with young kids, older kids, so that you don't always have to just draw a line and write the numbers 1 through 10. And then there's a PDF of my PowerPoint. So if I point to an online resource, you can just click on that slide and it'll take you to the online resource where you can download stuff. Oh, I know. The other thing too is I have a Facebook group. So if you search solution focus school counseling in Facebook, you'll and this is where mostly school counselors, but others, this is what we do. We talk about the model and how it works and what else we can do, and we share activities and all that.
I'm on it. I'm just going to get the link up.
Well, I've got 101 more questions, so what I might do is join the Facebook group and pester them.
I'm just going to put it on here. And
if you go to schoolcounselor.com and you click on the picture of the book, it'll take you to a page where you can find that Facebook group and everything else.
Yeah, I've just posted it on here as well. You are a true inspiration. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I haven't taken any notes because I'm going to rewatch this. Joe's a note taker because the truth is, even if I take notes, I won't be able to read my own writing. No point. But what amazing work! Absolutely brilliant. And
well, thank you. That means a lot. I really appreciate it. And especially you guys, doing the wonderful work that you do. It's hard work, and I'm glad that the model is making it a little bit easier for you, maybe helping a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what we've found with all the practitioners that we speak to is how giving this SF community is, and you're no different. Go on my website, download lots of useful fact sheets or information so that people can use it straight away rather than waiting to, you know, be proficient. There's something I can take away from that.
Right.
And we take away something from everyone that we speak to.
Ah, well, thank you. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I'm so pleased that you found the time to talk to us, Russ, because I know you're a busy guy.
My pleasure.
Don't say that, because I'm going to email him after this.
Well, it has been my pleasure. Sincerely, thank you for the invite. It's a pleasure talking to you guys. And I've watched you interview other people, and I've had a good time watching those as well. So I'm a fan.
Oh. Grainer, any last question or comment?
Well, just to say, it's been a real pleasure to be invited on here today, particularly to meet Russ. So yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you, all of you.
And thank you for helping us out, Grainer.
My pleasure.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, without you, Grainer,
email me your success stories. I love other people's stories of solution-focused success. So let me know. Email those for me.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. Right, we have definitely come to the end. Next week we have John Hendon next Wednesday, who will be joining us on FBS Chat. John is fantastic. Can't wait to. Well, we saw him in Bath a couple of years ago, but you know, there were so many people there, we didn't actually get to have an opportunity to have a good discussion. So we're saving that till next week. But Russ, you are absolutely amazing. Can I just ask that you wait there? Don't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere.
Don't touch anything. And thank you very much again, and see everybody soon.